welcome again, everyone. So for those who are here for the first time, welcome. For those who are habitués, welcome again. And today we are very happy to have Simon with us. So we got in contact with this concept with a friend from Brazil, Henrique. So he's a Caos pilot since I don't know how many years, but very nice guy. And we got in touch with this concept. Then we got in touch with Simon, and we could make a request for him to be here with us, sharing his knowledge, his wisdom. So very happy, Simon, for having you here. I will not introduce you more because you'll be introducing yourself properly. But the plan for this session is this. We'll have a quick connection with colleagues, and then Simon will be doing an introduction on the learning arches, one exercise, sense-making part, and then Q&A and closing. So it's kind of quick. So Simon, quickly, just like a teaser of what you'll be doing with us today, and then I'll be setting people to impromptu networking.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Fernando and Carolina. It's very nice to be here. And to the rest of you, nice to meet you all. I'm really nice. It's really nice that, Carolina, you gave the chance for us to pay attention to the people that in the lands, the first people in the lands we were from, because I was thinking about who were the first chaos pilots 32 years ago. So I was sitting in the office. So I'm not from Denmark, so I couldn't really think of the indigenous people, but I was thinking about who were the first people here. And that's also a nice way to go into what we're going to talk about today, because we are going to use learning arches and how to use them to visualize transformational learning and to increase autonomy, transparency, and sense of ownership for learners of all ages. But also we're going to go back to our own origins and actually work with our own learning maturity arches, and even have a chance to explore the development of our own epistemology from the day we were born. So we're actually going to go back. We're going to do a bit of going back to our roots, all of us today. Yeah, is that enough, Fernando? Or
yeah, perfect. I
yes,
think people are already excited. So Carolina.
Okay, so some of you know the impromptu networking, some don't. So, but I put in the chat the information for you all. So we are going to do the impromptu networking, and the mechanics is 3 rounds of 4 minutes each. So we are going to meet 3 different people. And the questions that you're going to discuss there is, what can you celebrate from the last days? And what do you expect to get from today's session, and how you can contribute to this group? Those are the questions. And I hope you have a conversation and greet people. And Simon will be among us, so it will be nice.
Yeah. Here we go, 4 minutes, and you'll be back in the main room. Okay, people are coming back. So you are more or less into the group, Alana, and the next round you'll be in with someone else.
Okay.
So let me do one
Can
thing
you say
here.
that again, the questions, please? The second question.
Carolina will put again in the chat for you. So I'll be using this random combination from Zoom. And as you know, sometimes it's not so random. We call it the Zoom karma. So if Zoom is putting you again with someone again, so please solve what you have to solve with that person. Don't let it go for the next life.
So the question.
4 minutes. Here we go. Jackie is coming. Hello, Sami.
What does it
Hello, thank you, Fernando.
Okay, now you're going again, Carolina.
Okay, so welcome, Jackie. I'm just gonna put in the chat the questions again. We are doing the impromptu networking. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we are in the last round now. So the 3rd round. Again, 4 minutes and good conversations, I believe.
Here we go.
I think it's everybody here again. And so just share in the chat what stood out for you in this conversation, something that you want to share, question, curiosity, observation, something that everybody's gonna be benefit from your thoughts or ideas. So please write in the chat. Mhm.
Yeah, I think we are ready for Simon.
Yes, we are.
Okay, cool. Thanks for those little chats. It was really nice, and it's so nice to see that the people I've talked to at least already have some working understanding of learning arches. So I think, Fernando, did you already introduce learning arches at some point in your?
Yeah, we used to help people start designing with virtual facilitation. So it's a good way for people to unfold different layers. And so we try our best. And it's not like you, but we try our best.
No, it's the most simple thing in the world that unfortunately gets complicated by people, you know, and that's what we're going to try and focus on today. How little is enough? That's the concept of arches. How little framing and structure is enough to allow us to be flexible. So let me just share my screen here, and I'll share this presentation, or Fernando, you can share this presentation already in the chat. And I'm just going to go full screen so that you can see full screen. Okay, so are we good? Can everyone see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. So I'm not going to go really into the history of chaos pilots because we're 32 years old this year, and let's just maybe explore how learning arches might bring alive the philosophy and the sort of andragogical pedagogical approach that we've developed over these 32 years. And then at the end, if you have specific questions about the school, then I'm more than happy to go there if you want. Actually, I just realized I've moved rooms, so I just got a warning that my battery it's about to go. So I think it's very important that I plug it in, or else it'd be a very early landing. Now, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So what I was thinking was that I'm just going to give you the most basic intro to learning arches, and then we're going to do a methodology that's going to allow you to sketch them fast and learn about the whole structure of them and the different levels. And then we'll come back when your knowledge is a bit higher and go deeper into what they are and how we use them. So the very basic bottom line is that when we work with learning arches, that every arch has a setting, mid-space holding, and a landing. And the idea is that when we set and when we land, it creates an arch. And that arch visualizes the learning space that we're actually holding as learners, facilitators, leaders, hosts, and teachers. And then when we work with content, first of all, we're working with time. So the first step of arches is always arching the time that you have to work, whether it's days, weeks, months, modules, semesters, schedules, years, whatever it is. And we have them like this. So we focus on how do we use one arch to set the whole learning? How do we then unfold content? And here we balance on we work with how do we balance theory, practice, and reflection continuously, and so on. And the idea then is what's below the line is the unknown. It's attitudes, values, behaviors, and mindsets. And what's above the line is the known, skills, knowledge, theory, and methods. And this is where everyone, and like teachers, facilitators, consultants, trainers are all very strong. You know your discipline, you know your subject, you're very competent in it, you know how to unpack knowledge. But what we're maybe not so good at is the ability to bring alive the attitudes, vision, behaviors, and mindsets, or the unknown. And also this is known globally, in some places anyway, as the hidden curriculum. And it's hidden because we lack the tools, methods, and confidence to work with emotional intelligence, connection, attitudes, values, behaviors, because they're quite subjective, and we're not trained to evaluate and reflect or even land them properly. So the whole idea then with learning arches is we have to set from the line and bring into the known the unknown. So when we set the learning in terms of what we're going to ask the students to do, or the learners, or anyone in a training process, we have to ask ourselves, what can we ask them to do or execute that's going to allow them to apply the skills and knowledge, theory and methods, but at the same time authentically embody the attitudes, values, mindsets, or behaviors. And this is key to Chaos Pilots, because it's this part that makes Chaos Pilots different to everybody else, all other business schools and leadership educations. And when we talk about how I'll go deeper into it now, but the idea what's above the line is definitely all content. It's skills and knowledge, and also values and attitudes. And the idea here is that when designing or delivering learning, attitudes and mindsets and values are equal to skills and knowledge. They're not a lesser added on thing later. They're actually considered equal. So we pay so much attention to this. And after we do a little bit of practice, we're going to talk about how do we actually set, hold, and land. How do we unpack what we call transformation learning and work with the 7 C's and explore how do we actually always, by a rule, explore connection, conditions, and context before content. But this is just a very loose frame, because straight away I'd like us to go in and practice. And the content we're going to use is your own learning maturity. So I hope you find your own learning maturity interesting enough. You should do. And what I'd like you to do now is just grab a big piece of paper if you can. The bigger the better. A3, 3 different colored pens at least. And if you can't find a bigger piece of paper, I think maybe get some kitchen paper or baking paper or anything you can find that sort of gives you a bit of scale. But A3 is okay if that's all you can get. But you need a minimum A3. So try and go and find the biggest piece of paper you can get your hands on. And just give me a thumbs up when you've found it. Take your time. 2 or 3 different color pieces of paper, pens. Biggest piece of papers you can get. We good? Yep. Okay. Right. So we're going to practice one of the core things that we work as learning designers at the Chaos Pilots, and that's always the concept of practice before theory, or experience before explanation, or context before content. These are the core rules that we work with in all our trainings, whether we're working from K to grey, K to 12 in that sense, or to grey in terms of executives, trainers, CEOs, and so on. So K to grey, it's a broad bandwidth. And we're going to do this by exploring and defining what is your learning edge. And we're going to do this through visualizing and exploring your lifelong learning maturity and epistemology towards life's next chapter, or your learning edge. So we're going to arch your whole life up until today, and then together we're going to set a new arch that starts today. And a learning edge defines a learner's stretch. It's their ability to design, host, facilitate, and lead learning, which maximizes and expands your students, and your peers' bandwidth for creativity, innovation, engagement, and risk. So when we work with learning design and learning arches, we know that the subject competence is normally very, very strong, and our understanding of skills and knowledge, theory, and methods are too. What we need to do is, how do we design learning that brings alive creativity, innovation, engagement, and risk-taking as part of that learning journey? Because with no risk-taking and no awareness of attitudes and mindsets and personal growth, there is no transformation on a personal level. And that's the stuff that lives below the line of the learning arches. And a learning edge is basically what it takes for you to stand firm and lead learning arches and into that vulnerability, but also the openness and being in service of the learners in front of you. So the learning edge also covers what have you learned? How have you pursued the truth and find the answers? That's the epistemology part. What drives your curiosity to explore and ask questions and solve complex challenges? And part one. So to put this into context, when we work with learning design, we're very hugely influenced by David Kolb here. So one of the founding members, the founding inspirations of the whole Chaos Pilot School 32 years ago was David Kolb, and his blatantly abrupt concept that all learning, if it's going to be meaningful, has to start with an experience. We love that, because that's what's led us to this idea of context before content. And if you go deeper into Kolb's work, he talks about generally about the acquisition of knowledge, where you, as a young person, you acquire, you then have early specialization, maybe a more mature specialization. And as you start growing confident in your own career, craft, character, abilities, and the potential for you to express yourself, you start adapting what you learn. Now, obviously, everything we do could be based on, you could have continual loops of learning where you acquire, you learn, you adapt continuously. What he's saying is that basically, if you break it down to our young adolescents, we're basically acquiring or in acquisition stage until, early mid-teens. Then at some point you start specializing, you start working with your own formal education, you start choosing then college, training, you start some understanding of where you want to go and a bit of a start of a self-direction. And then your confidence in your craft grows with your first job, second jobs, further applying, where you start, become more creative and applying all the multiple skills and experiences you have to the situation. And you start really taking control of your career, your expression, and how you show up, how you behave, and how you adapt. That's great. And you could apply that to every single learning experience you have. But at the Chaos Pilots, what's most important for us is the ability for self-actualization and systems actualization. And without self-actualization, you cannot inspire and lead. Without systems actualization, you cannot create sustainable or systemic change. And the big influences here are an amazing woman called Carol Sanford. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's one of the really leading thinkers going back 12 years of what's become a very popular concept now called regenerative thinking, regenerative business, regenerative leadership. And it's now become so prominent in the world of sustainability and where the idea of there is no more. So how do we regenerate what we have? So you can, and then if you look at the bottom here, the slide, there's some more information about the people. And these are the people who are currently inspiring us in moving forward. So you have the idea of self-actualization is your ability to inspire. It's the ability of what we call negative capability or capacity. So it's this understanding that with as you grow in craft, character, and confidence, or you grow your sense of agency, you start staying in complexity longer and backing yourself to solve complex problems with creative solutions. It comes with practice. And it actually was from John Keats, in fact, from 200 years ago, who used it as a famous poet and writer, and he used it as a way to describe people like in the old days Shakespeare, but in modern terms now you could use it to describe Miles Davis, maybe in the way that he left a space for people to fill with that creativity. So this idea of this meta motivation, working and being inspired and working towards things that are bigger than yourself. It's about putting your best performance forward and allowing others to invest in co-creating ownership in concepts. It's about this idea for your ability to lead and be part of creative collectives where you really focus on clear communication and what we call convergent action by Nathan Furr, which you see at the bottom here as well, is this idea that even when we're converging, we still have the opportunity to create. This is where the negative capacity. So rather than we go headfirst into convergence, we actually pause. We see, are we really creating something better or just more? And this is how you lead yourself. And then with the idea of systems actualization is, how do you then lead yourself and others out of chaos? How do you become a director of behavior and create and lead by example? And this, you don't need to be a leader to do this. This is about how you show up and perform yourself. It's the ability from Miles Davis here of deep listening, what he called the potential to move the center of gravity, where he stepped away from leadership and let people lead from any instrument or any chair. And this is what Learning Arches is based on, is that how do you create so much ownership when you set the learning space that students and learners feel clear to take risk, but also have a chance to give input to their continuous learning, where you can adapt and adjust in service of them and the people in front of you and not your own content. And this is really, really important to creating that ownership of a person's own learning journey. And then the idea to be systems, systems thinking, which again is very popular these days, and also understanding systemic behavior. And then also to lead complexity and then lead creative collectives when you don't have the answer, because that's what real innovation is. And Learning Arches is just based on this. Its ability as a teacher or as a facilitator to just create how little structure is enough for you to actually work with the learners, give them ownership and adapt real time to what's emerging. And right now, I just want you, just before we move into the Learning Arches, just take a moment and think, where are you right now? And where are you moving to? Because we're gonna work with that. So, so the process, the method we're going to do is based on the concept of epistemology. So it's the theory of knowledge. How do you know what you're allowed to know, question, or challenge? And we're actually going to visualize and understand what are the core attributes, experiences, and values that we've gained from our parents and over the years that allow us to make decisions so quickly that are deeply rooted in who we are as people. And then the epistemology, like, it's the theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its methods, scope, and distinction between justified belief and opinion. This is so important now in the world of fake news, where we have to train young people, especially, to challenge what they're being told online. The other person that's inspiring us right now, you might know, is this book called Immunity to Change. It's by Robert Keegan, and actually by, more importantly for me, Lisa Leahy. And they're working with this whole beautiful idea of actually how do we meet resistance, and how do we actually design for immunity to change and be aware of what's there. And this is really important when working with learning design, because there's a gap between being fully transparent and vulnerable as a learning designer and leader, as opposed to just delivering content in a linear functional way. And create a function and education hate creativity. So that's the change we're talking about. So I've just gone through this, and now, so what I'd like you to do is, with your pen, and we're going to go through this quite quickly based on time, but you can always go back to your sketch a little later and add more to it. But the first thing I want you to draw is exactly what's on the screen here. So you're going to draw from birth and you're going to draw act, learn, adapt, which is acquisition, specialization, integration, and then either two more arches, which would be the self-actualization, and another arch for systems actualization if you're already in the systems actualization phase. If not, just draw the arch for self-actualization and draw exactly as you see it here, and then mark where you are today in that journey. Now, we are making it linear, but for example, you could consider where act might be 0 to 15. And learn might be 16 to 30 or to 28. And then adapt could be 29 to 45 and so on, or to 40. So you can actually put your own dates on this, but we're just thinking about acquisition generally is up into early mid-teens. So you can just draw what's here, and then we're going to break it down into sub arches. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Sketching is the art form. So quick and dirty. And just give me a thumbs up when you've drawn it. Don't get out protractors and strings and all that sort of stuff. Just quick, dirty sketch is best. And then important, mark where you are today with a big fat X, where you think you are. Okay, right. So next step is we're going to focus. Hold on. Yeah, we're going to hold on. Okay. Next, we're going to focus on what's above the line, the known stuff. Okay. And here you can think about, start by breaking down the 4 arches. So like this. You want to break down these arches into smaller arches, and this could be, you could do this in blocks of 5 years. You could do it in blocks of 10, whatever makes sense, but don't think too much about it. Just find a way to break down these arches. So acquisition could be 3 arches of 5 years. Specialization could be 4 arches of 5 years, and so on. And we just want to work with sort of maybe 5 or 10 year cycles. You could break them down in many, many ways, but this is just the fastest way to do it for now. And when we've broken them down, we want to focus on, you know, what's happening in all arches need to have a title. So what's happening? What would the title of each of these arches be? And we're trying to break down specialization. And specialization could be the years you went to college or university. It could be your first job. It could be in that integration. It could already be. It could be where you moved job, changed country, got married, leaps of faith, where you're really happy or sad, successes, failures, best job, worst job, any sort of core stages in your life that sort of support, that land within these 3 overall areas, or 4 or 5 areas, depending on how many arches. And these are events in time. This is what we know has happened. And then there's some words there to inspire you: happiness, failures, ambition, leaps of faith, changing country, risks, locations, bold steps, risk-taking, family, personal developments, anything along that timeline, just sort of roughly in those 5 year blocks that you think are things that you know that happened. Events, adventures, jobs, college, marriage, babies, divorces, experiments, starting companies, closing companies. And we have some time for this, so just take your time and try and put, you know, maybe the top 1, 2, or 3 things that happened. We need to get into the good practice now of sort of putting a title on every arch we draw. So what would that arch be called? College years, first job, marriage, babies. And don't worry, we're going to find ways to connect these a little later, but we're just doing it step by step. More detail you put in, the better. If you have questions, you can shoot. You can just ask. while you're doing this phase. If you have any questions, you can ask.
Got a question, Simon.
Yeah, shoot.
I'm trying to discern in my life between my integration adapt phase and the self-actualization.
Yep.
What might I look for to say, this might be that point where one begins and the next starts, or one ends and the next starts?
Okay, so I think what's most important now is that you just draw all the arches and already draw some arches into wherever you put your X.
Yeah.
Between integration and self-actualization, is it?
Oh, where I put it? No, I put it sort of in the self-actualization.
Okay.
space.
So also draw the arches inside the self-actualization arch.
Yeah.
And just start by writing down what's happened in those arches.
Okay.
Because it's a really good question, but we're going to unfold. We're going to go a little bit deeper into the origins of your growth and personal development. So we can come back to that question.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I have to say,
But definitely draw the arches into the inspire, into the self-actualization part. And of course, this is very linear, and you could say that every learning arch has had acquisition, specialization, integration, and I totally understand that. But we just need to have we need to try to create some sort of frame to allow us to put in our known events.
So Simon, I have a question also, because I mean, I put an X between learn and adapt, but I'm far from early in my career. It just feels like it's a constant cycle. So I'm having a very hard time breaking these into things.
Yeah. So that's what I said. Obviously, every arch, small arch, could have acquisition, specialization, integration. So what you need to do is then just map out based on 5-year arches on this level. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and then just start marking in what happened in terms of jobs, learning, decisions, education, college adventures, success, events in your life. And then just use those 5 years to try to figure out what the content is. Does that help?
So ignoring the kind of overarchingness, act, acquisition, learn, specialization.
Yeah, don't get caught up in that, because as I said, every arch could be acquisition, specialization, integration. You could have these as like continuous loops all the way through your life.
So just every 5 years.
Yeah, just start with every 5 years, because even acquisition, according to Kolb, is 0 to 15, to your mid-teens, where you're acquiring everything about yourself, who you are, everything from putting stuff in your mouth as a baby, textures, feeling, gravity, everything is about acquisition in that early stage. So don't get caught up with that. That's just his framing. But you could just later on rename those first 15 years as this is who I am, or how I became who I was, or the boot camp of me, or whatever you decide to call it later. But you can just work in 5 or 10 year intervals. We're going to work with emerging ways of grouping them as well a little later.
Simon, I think Fernanda has a question.
Yeah, I can't see the hands up here, so just please shoot.
I think I get that now, but I was asking it myself, is the where we are now, is to see us as a whole, because he said consider age, family, and so on. So I can see myself and put myself where I am now in my life and choose how I do feel as a whole person, or do I can also look to one aspect of my life and choose how to analyze where I am in that point. For example, if I want to see where I am in learning to have, I don't know, family development or career, I can also have this.
Yeah. Yeah, you could do that, but for the sake of your own epistemology and to find out how you are, who you are right now, we need to track all the things on the known level in terms of events, in terms of personal, practical, and professional events that have driven us along the way to where we are now. So if you want to just even break down each 5 years, you just say what happened. What are the major events in terms of family, career, college that happened in each of these phases? What you're asking, you could totally just choose one and focus on that, but we're trying to find your full epistemology here. So we need all the events and data that we can get.
Okay.
And it's okay that they're just headlines. Could be just college, you know, it doesn't matter right now. But we're just trying to figure out what have you been doing for the last 30, 40, or 50 years. So, I mean, don't overthink it. Just any events that happened on personal, practical, professional level, just write it in. And then, as I said, we can come back to this a little later, but we want to just try to create as much information as we can in the time we have. So when you've sort of done that, then we want to focus on what's below the line. And this is really important. This is still the unknown. And the idea here is when you look at each of these periods or blocks or arches, or each of these 5 years, you know, if you think about it, what could be the top attitude, value, behavior, or mindset that you think you might have learned during that phase? Could it be that you started understanding about, so a lot of the values that we still have today are created back here when we're young and also with our parents. They might still be continuing. So even sometimes understanding what sort of values have my parents given me is really, really important. As you went through specialization, it could be, what were my mindsets? How did I work with self-determination, take control of my own career, my destiny, my self-direction? What were sort of the values I started building myself in terms of how I want to work with others, whether I wanted to work in the corporate or the private or NGO sector? All these things are sort of developing our unknown, which is the attitudes, mindsets, values, and behaviors. So under each arch, just think about one of them, not all of them. Maybe what's one attitude or one mindset that you think you might have learned, understood, practiced during each of these events, or what was a value or a type of behavior you learned? And where do you start exploring empathy more, or focus on equality, assertiveness? When did you start taking control over your own direction? Any sort of attitude, mindset, behavior, value, we write below the line. So think about whatever, just one per arch, per 5-year arch would be more than enough if you can think about it. And it's definitely associated with that experience. And it might only be now in hindsight that you might know the value or mindset that you actually learned during that period. So just break each arch down to one of the unknown elements. And it doesn't matter if you're not sure if it's an attitude or a value or a mindset. It doesn't matter. You can just write down one per arch. How are we doing? Any questions on the values and mindset stuff? And the reason why all these arches are all looped is because that consciously and unconsciously, all these values and mindsets and attitudes we are continuously bringing with us. We might have forgotten where we got them, but a lot of the decisions we make in our life are deeply rooted in these attitudes and mindsets that we've learned and grown along the way and the life we've had, but also through the mistakes we've made. So the idea of a looped arch here is the ability that we're actually continuously learning and carrying forward what we're learning consciously or unconsciously. So we take another minute just to write down some values, the primary values, attitudes, mindsets, or behaviors associated with each arch. And just give me a thumbs up if you're done. All right. Okay, we're going to move on. And remember, you can go back and add more to this later. The next stage we're thinking about, and the reason why, actually, first of all, the reason why it's below the line and in relation to the epistemology is that, as I said, everything that every arch that we've set, we've consciously or unconsciously brought forth or brought up with us these attitudes and mindsets. And it's the same in learning design, is that every time we set and land, we have to consciously design learning that brings forward, brings alive the values or the attitudes or mindsets together with the knowledge and skills through activation or execution or projects that allow the students to learn and embody, hopefully authentically, the mindsets and attitudes, towards tracking their own self-direction and personal development. The next phase is when you look, now that you've drawn the attitude, the values below the line and the events above the line, your career, your personal development, your acquisition, integration, and so on, just take a step back and look and see, is there any patterns that you can see that emerge? Is there a common thread or purpose that has driven you personally and professionally, and what is it? What has driven your curiosity and maybe creativity or self-direction or risk-taking or ambition over your life? Was there a specific event or decision that put you on the track you are on now? Was there an arch that started that you are currently still riding? So what reveals itself? Just take some notes. What are you seeing?
Where do we write that? In this green part?
Yeah, you can just write it. You can just write it because basically we're looking into overall patterns. So you can just write it at the part of the arches where you see that where the pattern might have emerged, or if there's an overall pattern that you've seen, then take it up to the macro level and sort of start writing it on the bigger arch from your birth to today. So it's either at the macro level or the meso level, which is around the integration, or the acquisition. So wherever you think that the emergence is best placed, you write it down. Could be that you've changed your job every 5 years and didn't know it. What's emerging? Is there a core value or behavior that's driven you to where you are, to the success you're having? Was it a major moment along the way that you saw that maybe you've had two or three major mentors in your life that have basically kickstarted or set an arch for you? Is there something that happened, a failure or a risk or losing a job, that might have started a new arch? So we call these hotspots. It's like a specific event or decision that puts you on the track or set a bigger arch that you are still in. Another 30 seconds and then we'll move on. Okay. So the idea, just before, the idea of emergence here is that when we're using learning arches and when we're delivering content as we go, the idea is that we use the arches and also the bigger arches to remind ourselves to get out of the content and step up to a higher or macro perspective or meta perspective or a helicopter view. And because what quite often happens, we get so stuck in content, we forget to actually step up and realign with the purpose, the intention, and also explore halfway through what have we now learned about our learners that we didn't know before, and what triggers them, what excites them, what's the workflow, the learning style that's emerging. So we're always trying to remind ourselves and then see what's emerging and then adapt real time to what's in front of us. Back to your arches. And now what we want to do is we want to see if there's any way of grouping some of the events or some of the arches on a higher level. And here, this is a higher level arch, like, so it's not even about learning adaptation. This is across multiple arches. These are what we call X levels. So these are ways of subgrouping events in your life that you now see are actually grouped. So here, the decision to quit your first job might have actually triggered arches that are actually grouped now that we look at them. So even though we might have seen them as separate events, we now look back and go, actually, all the decisions from this point, from when I started that new job and that new career, new focus based on a certain value or mindset, actually has lasted for 15, 20 years. So any ways we want of grouping the events in our life, and they can absolutely overlap. Could even be something that's happened already in your earlier years, that you saw something or you met somebody that put you on the track of being a nature conservative or a conservationist or whatever. So then we would set an arch that actually now we see how far back it actually might have started our interest in something. So you have as many X level arches as you want. Think about how to connect all the events, regardless of how much time is in between them. So I remember someone not so long ago described learning arches as this idea of what you call, nested dolls, where you have the small little doll in the middle and then loads of dolls that surround them. So you might have 7, 8 dolls with all the dolls inside each other. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to group or cluster events. In learning design, we're grouping, clustering content or skills or knowledge. But right now you're trying to see if you have ways to group or cluster or connect events that you now see are connected. All right, another minute and we move on because I want to give you guys a chance to actually talk about it. Talk about your arches. So if you work with content or you're working with curriculum development or any type of learning design, what we're always trying to do is we're trying to subgroup content that might start at one point and finish at another point. And we would actually connect them with what we call a next level arch. So the idea that is when we're setting a specific part of that arch or that content or that subject or skill, we're actually also setting a longer period where the learners see that they will revisit or have longer time to practice and apply that learning methodology. The idea then is that when we have our next session with them, obviously we encounter then what's in between. So where we meet them after giving them the basics, where we might meet them later on, having had some time to apply, is a whole different place, different area. So that's the chaos prize when we work with skills, and we've defined the core skills. Obviously, the students practice leadership at many different times during their education, where the complexity, context, and challenge increases exponentially. So the skill of leadership earlier on is different to the leadership skill that they practice later on. So you might connect 4 or 5 leadership sessions with one major X-level arch. Okay, now, right. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment because I would love to see all your arches. So could you hold your arches up to the screen? I want to see the chaos. Yes, look at that. That is amazing. We haven't even have under arches, and I haven't even talked about them yet. Beautiful. So listen, job done. You just take your lifelong learning as a template for all your transformational learning for all your students and clients and just apply content. Done. Job done. Easy. Beautiful. Nice work, David. That is amazing. Okay. So we still have some time. So what I'd love for you to go out with Fernando. Did you also do it again?
No,
yeah.
But I have the breakouts ready with 2 people in each.
Okay. So what I'd love us to do is, let me just find it here. So breaker rooms, let me just do this because I'm just hacking now for some time. Okay, so we're going to do this. Do we have 15 minutes, Fernando?
Yeah, until the very end.
So we're going to hack this. Let me do this real quick. Right, I'm just going to change the times live here. 15 minutes. 6 minutes.
Maybe 12.
No, I'm just working out here. 7. I'm just updating your instructions.
Okay.
That is then 5, and then that is 3, and that is okay. Right, we're going to do 16 minutes, and I'm going to share the instructions that you can click on now and have them in your breakout room. We'll go back to Zoom here. Okay, so there's the instructions. You're going to come in. You're going to have a chance to share your own arches and your own discoveries. Anything that's first of all, you're going to get a beautiful random stranger, and then you're going to share what you feel comfortable in sharing from your learning journey based on anything that's based on the emergence, what's appeared, and what you've noticed. Then that person is going to listen, and they're going to have 3 minutes together with you to basically show you some beautiful and practice some beautiful appreciative inquiry. And what they're going to say is they're going to say 3 things. What stands out to me from your learning journey is, what inspires me from your story is, and your next arch you set today could be built on your amazing ability to do 2 particular things that have stood out from the presentation. The link is there. So there's a link there for everybody. It's not slide. I think it's different to slide 18. Have I changed it?
Slide
Oh,
18 on mine.
18.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is slide 18. Very good. Thank you. Slide 18. Yep. And then when you're in your rooms, you can just go through this process. And Fernando, have you led so they can share their screens?
Yeah, they can.
Beautiful. Okay, I'll see you completely appreciated in 16 minutes.
Here we go.
Okay, we're recording. Okay, so do you want to share with us, Carolina?
Yeah. So one thing that I put here is being vulnerable. So I'm being vulnerable right now.
Yeah, good. Nice.
For everybody in my life.
Yeah. It's fully transparent.
Yeah, so what I just love it because it brought me to thinking about my life, and so going from my birth to today, and also to look to the patterns and the values. And it's something that I have in mind in myself is I believe in self-awareness, self-discovery, and self-development. So this is
so where did those 3 things come from in your when did you start exploring them, discovering them?
when I born.
Yeah.
I was born.
So you got to, are your parents still alive?
My mom.
Okay, so you got to call her after this and thank her.
Yeah, I actually I was born with the malfunction, so I almost died, and I had a lot of difficulties in my childhood, but it led me to start like knowing myself. First, my body, because I couldn't eat any glucose and I couldn't eat any carbohydrate, so I had a very, very strict diet. And I needed to, and no doctors knew about what I had. So I had to discover that from myself. So looking to the food and said, oh, is this food good for me? So since I was like 7 years old.
So your acquisition was on a whole different level than most people, even to acquire what you can eat and what you can't eat.
Yeah, so what was very interesting for me doing this is that I learned today. So the insight is that I was like looking to myself in a deeper level first in my body. This was an eating thing.
Yeah.
And then I would start like looking to my behaviors. So then as I grow, I was like, okay, so I was trying this and that. And then I became more aware of my beliefs and values and all of that. So it was like a kind of the same thing, same pattern in my life, but in different areas. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess then you're probably very good. You're probably a very good decision maker.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, because I guess that's something that would stand out. Yeah, and is there another sort of a new discovery or a new awareness or something that's emerged?
Yeah, like
any patterns?
Yeah, the decisions that I think I made, it's related to places, to live in places.
Oh, wow.
So one was in Paraty. It's a big decision to go there and live there for a while. And I did a very meaningful work there with traditional communities. And then moving to Botucatu. Then I was married with Fernando already. And but we decided to go there, and then we started learning anthroposophy, which changed our lives in terms of how we work, how we see life, how we see people. And so there was like a kind of a frame or a philosophy behind all our work. And then after that was Nelson. So to come to Canada. And then is for me was something that, okay, let's challenge my beliefs. Let's challenge my values. And let's see if I really know who I am.
And so one arch started when you met Fernando.
Oh, that was 30.
And then a new arch started as part of that arch.
Yeah, it was like in the middle of these arches here.
Yeah. So part of that arch was meeting Fernando, and then a part of that sort of way of connecting. So then after meeting Fernando, then the next arch was going to Nelson. So that's a way of grouping. So that's, that's an X level.
I have that.
Probably that's an arch that hasn't landed yet, because you still know Fernando. So that's an arch that's still.
Yeah, one arch that landed, it was the permanent residency.
Yeah, it's what
there you go, man. And then,
Yeah.
but also it's okay to have arches that haven't landed yet.
Yes,
right?
it's like today. So we have the permanent residency here.
Yeah. But also there's an arch, if you look at where you met Fernando or when you moved to Nelson, that's an arch that started.
Yeah, this one is I landed here, but maybe it has to. Yeah,
no, that's an arch that's on a high level. That's still live. That's into the future.
Yeah, another color.
Yeah, I don't have plans to land this arch soon, Caroline. So
that's good. That's good. The relationship, learning arches for relationships is a whole different course.
I
probably more expensive for sure.
Oh yeah, especially I'm going to do a McKenzie job on it. If you would like me to land it, my prices have trebled.
I would love.
Okay, so what else has emerged
here?
Is there anything else that's emerged, or that you now appreciate, look back on events or hotspots or things that triggered you onto the path you're on now?
Yeah, one phrase that came to my mind, and I think was a very good one. It's life is what emerges.
Yes, it is.
So this came to me like, okay, looking at this, it came to me like life is what emerges. So sometimes we plan with this and that, like our patterns or this, but it's all what emerges all the time. So we have cycles, we have patterns, and we have things, but it's all emerging. And so if you are aware of what is emerging, you can decide better, or you can, choose, or you can just move forward with more consciousness.
Exactly, which is why it's really good, even though you might have, now you look back, you might have things that you think are emerging, but now you see actually there was a clear pattern. So you might group those arches and then figure out what led to that decision. And normally what's happening is that consciously or very consciously, we have done some major reflection or landing in terms of who we are, what we want to do, what we stand for. And then normally that kickstarts a new arch that probably hasn't landed yet, but it's definitely brought us in a direction that we wouldn't have been in if we didn't land. And sometimes the arches that land are done by ourselves, or they're done extrinsically. So it could be that someone dies, you lose your job, you're divorced, or in the more positives, which also sets a new arch. If you lose a new job, there's a new arch starts. If you have a baby, there's a new arch starts. If someone dies or you lose someone, there's a new arch without them that starts. So
and also in my arches here, so the places that I lived. So I lived for 2 years in Paraty. So there was an arch that starting here and landing because I leave Paraty. Then I went to Botucatu, so then another arch, and then it landed now I am in Nelson, but like still going on. So it's still like something that is.
Yeah, so you can group those 3 locations going back to your first time moving away, because that's put you on that started an arch where you started traveling.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So then, so you can group those arches, and then maybe the thing is, like, at what point, if you haven't already done it, at some point you will land that phase of traveling, and maybe to decide whether Nelson is the place to stay, or if it's time to move on again.
well, Denmark.
Yeah. Yeah. All arches land in Denmark.
Yeah, I did one next level with school and work in one level, and the other level was places, so the cities, and it's interesting to group in different levels.
Yes, and so these are the patterns that we're looking for that emerge, right? And they don't exist if we look back at they don't exist in the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
These are the connections that actually exist, but they only exist when we actually visualize it and bring it alive. Because curriculum is so linear and impersonal.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when we use learning arts of the content, then we find connections. So I guess what stands out for me from your learning journey is this ability to feel comfortable in decision making, but also in not rushing decisions either. So you're really good at decision making, but you seem to find a way to actually fully see, explore, be fully present, and then make a really good decision. So the decision is less about sort of on the spot; it's much more informed. And what inspires me from your story is this ability to keep moving on and land very quickly with a sense of self-confidence and comfort, regardless of the space, and then this amazing ability to actually recontextualize yourself, so that you're never finished. You're never the finished item. That you've got so much to learn. So there's always this negative capability or capacity in you, and it's not negative. It's the space that's still available for intention, for new context, new relationships, new people, new cultures. And what your next arch set today could be built on is your amazing ability to back yourself up with these decisions, but also maybe there's a chance to really land and be really present. And where can you go and learn and grow when you're really here? I mean, there, but I mean, you know what I mean? Really, really here. But also there's a chance for a major landing point in your life where you can really celebrate everything you've done to get to this point, this place, and then explore, what's next in that place, but also to sort of figure out to move into that systems integration. For how can you not only be present and be really appreciative of what you're learning there, but also contribute to creating systemic or sustainable change where you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One thing that I noticed as well here was like I'm a risk taker. So, but in the beginning of my life was like with my life, so going to mountains and doing like a very risk things, putting my life at risk, and then it became more subtle. And so now what you just said is it's like this subtle taking risk of a new career, or so I'm seeing that I will become a counselor in a while, so I registered one. So I already working on that, but I'm doing this, and so I can see how this work can transform people's life. And
so you are going to definitely be working with systems integration and creating meaningful value. But maybe you also need to consciously be aware of that. That's a major new arch that's setting, and just reconnect with what's worked for you in the past of setting. On a personal, practical, and professional level, and maybe just I'm not saying take more risks, but I'm saying definitely get back up the mountains.
Get back to, sorry.
Get back up the mountains. Go back to the things that you know that you can connect with from this exercise that you have distanced yourself from, that gave you so much memories and also confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you need to start abseiling down mountains again, but maybe it's just about meeting yourself where you're at now, but also trying to take forward all the best things that have given you growth and experience and passion and interest. I'd be interested to see, is there anything that has revealed itself up into this new arch for the new job or career you're starting? Is there any values or attitudes or mindsets that have supported that to get to where to make that decision?
Yeah, I think it's a belief that if everybody knows a little bit more themselves, we are gonna have a better world.
Yeah, for sure. Amen.
Yeah, so if if I can help everyone to step a little bit further in their own self-development, self-discovery and self-development, so then they will be a better person, and so this person will have a better family and a better, so just kind of ripple effect.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good. I mean, it's a big step to work with landing somewhere now, and then actually working with trying to create deeper, more meaningful connection and impact, which is really cool.
Yeah, thank you for this. I love it.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. I mean, we use it as a coaching tool as well, not only for executives and CEOs to see the good and bad patterns, and quite often most of them realize, shit, I stopped learning actually 20 years ago. They realize they haven't set a new learning arch intentionally in a long time, because it becomes a myth. Then the myth becomes a reality when CEOs think they know everything and they don't need to learn anything. And then when they see how much fun they had learning in their life, they're going, Jesus, why have I not been learning? And it's totally self-realization. You could never tell them that. And then also we use it sometimes inside organizations where we get them to arch the development of the company, where they can see, just like your life, the moments of high acceleration, high connection, where they fired, hired, grew, passion, interest, all these things they are visualized. And they're back.
Yeah.
We are over time, but we are good.
We are over time.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to share a little bit? How first of all, how was that to share your LMAs with a complete, beautiful, random stranger?
So good.
Yeah. So what was so good, David?
Yeah, I know that was not a detailed explanation. Just Amanda's witnessing and seeing some things and having ahas myself and ahas that were between us, and just felt celebrated. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, nice. Well, if you're lucky enough to have a partner at home, go through the arches with them. It's so informative to them about who you are and how lucky they are to know you, but also a little bit about your history, but not the history part, more the sort of personal life journey part. And I suggest maybe doing it over a glass of wine. That also helps. So we have run out of time, and this balance of what do we practice on? We practice on actually practice before theory. So there was a few slides we didn't get to go through, but the bottom line, what learning arches are. There's also a free ebook that some of you might have already seen, that you can download, and all the work we do is open source. And maybe I'll put together a little collection that Fernando can share after. Actually, Fernando and Caroline have frozen.
Oh,
There's some deep thought.
There.
Thank you, Simon. I wish I actually had the chance to learn about this arches at my university time to plan once I face the real world. but definitely I will use it with my children.
Oh yeah, dude, my son
Yeah.
used it.
Yeah, we had a very insightful discussion,
nice.
Jennifer and I, about the arch design.
Very, very good. At the end of June, there's going to be a free app that's going to allow you to build arches on web browsers. And I've been testing with my son, who's 12, and he used it to design his weekly fitness plan. So he can even use it. But listen, Fernando, are we done with time, or is there time for Q&A for anyone who wants to stick around, or what do you think?
Yeah, if people can stay 5 more minutes, you can wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm okay sticking around for a burning question or two.
Is it still recorded?
Yeah, it is. And all these links that Simon is sharing, you'll be having by email after the session. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. Thank you, Fernando, Caroline, for such interesting topic. I have to leave now. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Doctor.
Bye, Sammy.
Maybe I can do a question. Doing my learning arc, maybe I identify common patterns or some common aspects that drive me on these different steps. So I put in the top of the 3 arcs, because you mentioned to be like common. So I didn't get the difference between these aspects that cross the 3 arcs and the X level arcs, or are they the same? Which means that I think I made the step 3 and 4 somehow the same, but
that's
maybe
okay.
I write the step 4.
They are similar. They're both to do with emergence and patterns. So the first one is about what's emerging in terms of what patterns am I seeing? Oh shit, look, every 5 years I create a job, or like Carolina, every 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 6, 12 years, she'll change her country. So there might be patterns that we see. And then that's sort of on a personal sort of level, like what's driving me, what sort of patterns am I seeing in terms of how I move, change, adapt. So it's very much on the personal, professional level. And then the 4th sector is then what emerges in the sense of creating connections between things that might have happened 10 years ago, and then all of a sudden I see, God, now I met that guy in that bar, and he introduced me to this, and here 10 years later, my new job is in relation to architecture or whatever it is, and now I can start seeing connections. So we use the X levels to connect arches that could have a big span between each other, where we're seeing sort of patterns or connections of events, and as learning designers, we're always trying to do the same with learning. The idea of doing one thing once and like sort of tourism, Eiffel Tower, I've seen that, I've seen this, I've seen this. The idea is that when we work with core skills, we have to revisit them again and again and again. But the space in between is based on application, learning, growth, challenge, life, success, failure, so that when we revisit that point later on, if we do leadership again, obviously the leadership that will follow then will be different, but also who we are is different. So even who you are in each of these arches is changing, because you're growing in agency, craft, character, integration, skills. And so the emerging in terms of patterns, in terms of decision making and focus and career and skills and development is one thing, and then using the arches to group and cluster events throughout your life is another thing. And then you have to give that arch a title. So that could have been that might be focus on NGO work, or community based, or working to create value, whatever it is. These sort of patterns just emerge, and then we can group things, because then we can see there's actually a stepping stone. Nothing has happened by chance. Where I am today, and now I can see was a result of this and this happening. And then you can always ring back, you know, call up those people in your life and thank them, because now you realize that when you know, whatever they did with your life 10 years ago has actually had an impact. And then also, it's okay that some arches don't land. They're still flowing, but also you might ask yourself, if there's arches that you see have landed, that you didn't land properly, then that could be having an impact on how you approach challenges, problem, or even people. So to give you an example would be, I worked once with a CEO whose career was faltering, and they realized that that major landing point was the death of their father, but they never landed it. In fact, the arch was still going. And then when they used learning arches, they could see that it landed, but they had never landed it. So then they created an event to actually land properly the death of their father, which actually then led them to set a new arch. It's quite an extreme example, but it gives you an idea sometimes that we might be still carrying forward things. So you could even ask yourself, professionally, personally, or practically, is there anything you need to land before you set this new arch? Yeah. I see David and Camilla have a question, and that's probably enough time just for 2 questions.
Go ahead, Camilla. You had your hand up.
Okay. So I just would like to ask you, when we are designing a learning program and we know that we finished an arch, we already know how the students are dealing with the topic. What are the important elements that I need to pay attention to before I move forward to the next one?
Okay, so there's 2 primary things. One is you very simply ask them, what would they like more of and what would they like less of? Right? Very, very simple. And the first time you ask students this, they'll fall off their chair because they've never been asked it before in their life. And then they might go, I don't know, you decide. Okay, I'll decide. But then after a while, you get used to asking. And what they're asking for is what they want more of and less of. And if they want more of something, then you have a chance to feed that forward. And if they want less of something, then you have a chance to be aware of that feeding forward. But also next time you run that training, that's already input to that phase or that arch of the training. Also, when we land, we're always asking ourselves, where are we? Where we come from? What are we doing? Where are we going? And the idea is that we do it iteratively and incrementally, because education doesn't pause. It waits to the end and goes, who's with me? And half the team are there, and the other half are left discarded after the first week. And the problem then is that what they go towards, they actually then end up going towards disengagement. So when we land, or even when we halfway through an arch, we always ask ourselves, how close are that group towards frustration or breakthrough? And if we don't support, even with micro intervention, support them towards breakthrough, but we don't give them the answer, then there's a greater chance they won't become disengaged. If people are frustrated to hell, then we have to do a major intervention and actually ask, what do we need more of, less of? And here you might create more clarity, give less frustration, lower the volume down on your high ambition for what you expect them to do, which is the sin of all facilitators and teachers. So you don't even wait until the end. You're already using the mid arch point to use what we call formative assessment. And then when we land, we're not only landing summatively, we're also landing authentically. So what are they learning about themselves and others, their interaction with others, how their actions and behaviors affect other people? What are they learning now about the content? And when we land as well, it's not just about the personal development, it's about knowledge and skills. What are our gaps? What are now our known unknowns? And basically, we would always try to land context before we set content. So how can we land the context and then based on that ask them, what do we want more of? 9 times out of 10, they'll ask for more of what they're about to get. Because you're really good designers, learning designers. You just create that context for the learners of all ages to understand why is what they're about to get in content, theory, and methods useful, powerful, and relevant. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Camilla? But also it's a moment for you to breathe. Make sure that people catch up. And then make sure that people are at least ready to set, but are aware that they might need to grow or work, or you might need to adapt. And when learners see that your ability to adapt, then that's a whole different collaboration relationship. And then they start feeling ownership of their learning journey. Yeah. David, last question, my friend.
Yeah, it's a comment and a gratitude. But big aha for me as I mapped it out was I put red circles each time I had a disruption in my life, about 7 of them. And I realized some of them happened to me, felt like it, like surprise, and some were more intentionally chosen, like starting out my own business, etc. And what I realized was how disruptions leads to good things, but in the moment it can be this tensing up, right? And I'm on the edge of a new disruption. And so I'm thinking, oh, it's not all bad. There's this juicy stuff to come. And then the last thing I'll say is realizing how community, when I moved from the East Coast out here, I had a lack of community and overwhelmed with so much more. And then when I have learning communities or other communities, how that makes life so rich. So I'm thinking about that thread of community through disruption. So,
okay, so I've got a question.
Yes.
Thanks for that, David. How do you know you're on the edge of a disruption?
I'm trying not to tell the whole story.
No, but I mean, my point is, if you know it's coming,
yes,
then it's maybe it's more of a proactive disruption, or the potential of
exactly. I'm more in the not in the driver's seat, but I'm more able to navigate it rather than Yep.
But also, what you could do with your learning arches is now you're approaching so many disruptions, and you're getting pretty good at it. Maybe see if there's any patterns that you're creating to create these disruptions.
Right. And welcome them even unconsciously at times. Yeah.
And so what's important is that we're not waiting for the next disruption to happen. We take control. So we land with intent.
Yeah.
What have I done? Where am I going? What have I learned? What should I keep? What should I keep, lose, or change? And then also, like you said, that you're 4.5 years in the startup. You're way past the startup phase, my friend.
Yeah.
Startup stops after 2 years.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to figure out, how could you really focus on this next arch, and things, and even just draw the next 2 or 3 months for yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So how can you set this next arch with intent, but also with pride and conviction and confidence? Celebrate it. But also then think about, how would you, if you could design the next 3 months, what would the arches look like? Because you're setting this major, obviously there's other arches still going across on top on the macro level.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon, for coming and sharing all your knowledge, your, theory, research.
It's emergent.
Yeah.
But stay in touch, contact with me on LinkedIn, and you know what, I do this every day, so it's always okay to ask questions.
Great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll be setting a continuation. So Fernando is asking for another session. So yeah, we'll be in touch with people who attended and those who couldn't. Maybe we can set another session together.
Well, we could do a session where I just get to just go through the learning arches in like the 4 slides that we didn't get a chance to get to.
Yeah,
everyone has such interesting lives.
Awesome.
Yes,
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Carolina.
Thank you so much.
Simon.
Yeah, you're
Thank you,
welcome.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.